Hello guys. So this is like the first video that I'm gonna be shooting. So in this video I want for us to be talking about equations. Now on equations we're going to be talking about the three kinds of equations, which are linear equations, simultaneous equations, and quadratic equations. So for this one, we're going to be talking about how to form simultaneous equations, how to form linear equations, how to form quadratic equations, and how to solve them. So in this video we're going to be focusing on linear equations. So for linear equations, when we talk about forming them, that's going to be the first thing that I want for us to be looking at. So when we talk about forming linear equations, you're going to usually be given a word problem, and from that word problem you're going to have to deduce a mathematical statement to represent the information that you are given. But I want for us to learn a few words or key terms that usually tend to appear in those word problems that will guide you that will guide you on how to form that perfect mathematical statement for the information. So you usually have words like times, which would imply multiplication, words like add, total, or sum, which would imply an addition. You have words like difference, which would imply a subtraction, and then words like multiply, I think that's self-explanatory. Divided, quotient, still talking about division, right? We'll be talking about division. Now I want for us to have a look at some questions, and in those questions we'll try to work them out together and see whether you guys will be able to understand the concept with this one. This is the first one. It's way simpler, so let's start with this one, right? So it says if x is multiplied by 4 and then added to 3, the result is 31. Form an equation for the above information and solve for the value of x. So for this one, we're obviously going to form that mathematical statement and then we're going to solve it. So for this one, key terms, you have words like multiply, and then you have added to. So multiply would automatically tell our brain to think of multiplication, add would tell us to think of addition, right? So if x is just a random number that we don't know, so they're saying x is multiplied by 4, right? And then it's added to 3 to give a result of 31. So the result would tell us this thing is equals to 31. So we now have to solve for the value of x. So x times 4x is going to give us 4x plus 3 is equals to 31, and then you have to subtract 3 on both sides of the equal sign. So you end up with 4x. 3 minus 3 is 0, so you don't need to write that one. So 31 minus 3, you end up with 28. And then so 4x is equals to 28. So for you to end up with x alone, you have to divide both of the sides by 4. If you divide both sides by 4, you can find out that x is equals to 7, right? So this is the number that they're talking about. So okay, so for the second question, they're telling us that Sipo is 3 years older than Temba. Temba is x years old, right? Not older, I think it's x years old. So write down the expression to represent Sipo's age. And then the second one is telling us if the sum of their ages is 19 years, form an equation to represent their ages, right? And then the third question is telling us to solve the equation that we just formed here and to deduce their ages. So now for the first one, Roman figure 1, it says write down an expression for Sipo's age. So Sipo is 3 years older than Temba. So the age for Sipo is, you're going to have Temba's age, and then if you add 3, that is going to give you Sipo's age. And then now notice, since they're telling us to form an expression, that means we are not going to have an equal sign. An expression does not have an equal sign, okay? And then when we move on to Roman figure number 2, Roman figure number 2 says if the sum of their ages is 19 years, form an equation to represent their ages. So that tells us to form an equation. So an equation, we're going to expect to have an equal sign here. So we're going to be having Sipo's age being added to Temba's age, which is x, and this, they're saying it has to give us what? 19. So just like that, you're going to have to collect like terms, which is simplifying. So I hope you guys already know how to do that. So you're going to collect the x's, and then you're going to find out that since the x's are like terms, so you collect them. So you end up with 2x plus 3 is equals to 19, right? And then we still do the same thing. We subtract 3 both sides, then you end up with 2x is equals to 19 minus 3 is going to give you 16, and then divide both sides by 2, so x is equals to 8. Oh, I'm sorry. So yes, 2x here, 2x is equals to 16, divide both sides by 2, you end up with x is equals to 8. We're good with that, right? And then when we get to the third portion, for us to deduce their ages, so they're telling us we have to find out how old is Sipo and how old is Temba. So they say Temba's age is x, so we already know that x is equals to 8. So this is telling us that Temba, oh yeah, I solved this equation whereas I was supposed to be doing it for the third part, so forgive me, but it's still the same process, right? So we'll just answer the last part. So Temba is what? Temba is 8 years, and then now we have to find out for Sipo. They're telling us that Sipo is 3 years older than Temba, so we simply just add 3 to the age of Temba. So it's 8 plus 3, which is equals to 11 years. So that is those are their ages, right? Okay, so now we're going to do another thing. This time we're just going to be solving the equations. Like, there is also a scenario whereby in the exam you're just going to be given an equation you have to solve. You don't have to find for yourself, you just have to solve it. So we'll start off with the easy ones, and they will progressively get harder. And then, so the first one, you have 2x plus 1 is equals to 5. So how we would solve this one? We'd just say 2x, and then we subtract 1 both sides. Right? Both sides of the equal sign. So we're going to end up with 2x. 1 minus 1 is going to cancel each other out, and then you're going to 5 minus 1, that's going to give you 4. So x is going to be equals to, if you divide both sides by 2, we're going to find out x is also equals to 2, right? And then just to make it a bit interesting here, this one we were talking about collecting the like terms, right? So if you're collecting like terms, for this one you have 2x plus 3x is equals to 15. So you have to collect the like terms here. So 2x plus 3x is going to give us 5x is equals to 15, right? And then you divide both sides by 5, so x is now equals to 3, right? And then we have another really interesting one here. This one, you have 4x is divided by 3 is equals to 8. So how we're going to solve this one, we first have to multiply both sides of the equal sign by 3. So let me just write it down a little bit, because I don't like to work on the question. So if you multiply both sides by 3, you multiply both sides by 3. This 3 here is going to cancel this 3 here. And then 8 times 3 is going to give you 24. So 4x is equals to 24. Then you're going to divide both sides by 4. If you divide both sides by 4, you're going to find out that x is equals to 6, right? Yeah, I think it's pretty simple enough, and you guys can follow the working, right? So then we're gonna move on to this other one, also a really interesting one. So this one, you see how you have fractions and then the denominators are not the same, so you'd have to first find a common denominator. So for you to find a common denominator, you'd multiply the denominator so that you can come up with a common one. So 5 times 6, that's going to give you a common denominator of 30. and then you would cross multiply, right? So you'd have 5. Let me just start with this one. You have 4x times 6, right? So that's gonna give you what? It's gonna give you 24x, and then you're gonna have 5 times negative 7x, which is gonna give us negative 35 is equals to 15, right? X also. So you have to collect the like terms. That is 24 minus 35 x is equals to 15 over 13. So 24 minus 35 is negative 11x over 30 is equals to 15. And at this point we can either do it like we did here earlier, whereby we multiply both sides by the denominator, which is 30 here, or we could just immediately just cross multiply from this one. So let me just cross multiply here. So we'll just assume this, it's 15, it's obviously it's over 1, right? It's still the same thing. 15 divided by 1 is still 15, so it's still the same thing. So you just cross multiply here, and then you have negative 11x. Again, it's negative 11x times 1, it still remains the same. It's equals to 30 times 15, which is 450, right? And then you divide both sides by negative 11, divide both sides by negative 11. X is equals to, this cancels here, this cancels here. X is equal to negative 450 over 11, right? And then you write this as an improper fraction, is negative 40 10 over 11. So this would be your answer. Oh, so yeah, this would be your answer here. So thank you. I hope you guys enjoyed the video.